everybody. Welcome to the Right or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hi. So today with us, we have Tyler you just told me Wittkofsky. No,
Wittkofsky.
Wittkofsky.
There you go.
As I said it, I'm like, that's not it. Wittkofsky. See how quickly my brain forgets things? He literally just told me, and I already. So we're gonna try again. Welcome with us, Tyler Wittkofsky. See?
Perfect.
I did it. So where are you joining us from?
So right now we are in Lake Waccamaw, North Carolina. It's about an hour from the beach, from Wilmington area. We're actually from the Leland, North Carolina, which is about 15 minutes from the beach. But we sold our house back in May and are now living full time on the road.
Oh, wow. And how is that going?
It's really fun. It was a big adjustment because we had a big 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on an acre of land, big fenced in backyard. And then we sold it and went to a 31-foot RV and sold most of our stuff and went down to a simpler lifestyle. So it was an adjustment at first, but we really love it. I mean, my wife and I have gotten a lot closer. My dogs are a lot happier. So it's just been a really good move for us.
Nice. So obviously you guys are both able to work from the road then?
Yeah, we both have remote positions. I actually own my own companies, Tea with Coffee Media and the Wittkofsky Company, and my wife is a college admissions rep.
Oh, cool. So that works out well then. And the dogs, more importantly, you said dogs plural?
Yes, we have 2 German Shepherd mixes. One is Dutch, and they're both rescues. Dutch is a German Shepherd Chow mix. Belle is a German Shepherd Pity mix. And both of them were rescues and have been blessings for our life. 2 of the best dogs you could ever ask for.
I love dogs. So I have 3 dogs. I love them. Always rescues because, they need lovins too. Um, so how are they adjusting to not having their big fenced-in yard?
Well, our youngest, Belle, she tore her ACL about a year ago now. Had surgery about 4 months ago, and then about a month ago she tore her other ACL. So it's actually been a good thing because she's not tempted to go out and run, so we have to take her out on a leash now. So it's been a good thing, but they've adjusted pretty well. I think at first they were kind of, because like I said, we had a big fenced in backyard on an acre of
Yeah.
land and they could run whenever they wanted. But I think they really enjoy being in a closer space to us because before it was like I was in the living room doing work and my wife was in our office and the dogs were in one bedroom and the other dog was in another bedroom and we were just so
Mhm.
separated, and now we're so close together. And our oldest boy Dutch, he is such a player now. He wasn't really a big playing dog before, but since we've moved into the RV, he loves to play, and he's
Hmm.
gotten a lot closer to his mom. Whenever we got him, his mom, my wife, was actually going to school at about 4 hours away from us, so she
Oh,
didn't get
wow.
to spend a lot of time with him, and me and him bonded. But since we've moved into the RV, they've bonded a lot.
Okay. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I know so like I said, we've got 3 dogs, but one of them is a shepherd. And he is such a suck. Like he just has to be right there with me all the
Hmm.
time. And I mean, he does like to run and play, but yeah, he would be. But the funny thing is with him, is that when we take him in the car, he's like, "Yay, we're going in the car!" And then as soon as the car starts, he's like, "Oh no, the car is moving." Are your dogs? He's the only dog I've ever known that's like, "Oh no, the car is moving," and like super scared, and he has to look out the front window. He will not look out the side windows.
Oh,
Even if you put it down, he's like, "No, I don't care about the side window. I need to look at straight where I'm going." So he's a very funny dog. But do you guys dogs just kind of chill while you're driving, or what do they do?
oh, well, whenever I can't even say the R word because they're sitting right here and they'll jump up if I say it.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny.
we have a Jeep, so if we go into the Jeep, they love it. They love sitting in the back seat. We've got it set up with them. We've got the dog cover and we've got leashes that connect to the back of the seat. So we've got it all set up for them because, who needs humans in the back when you've got dogs that can ride in the back?
I
Uh,
totally agree.
but when we ride in the RV, are they kinda Belle has gotten used to it, but Dutch, like, sits in a corner. He's picked out a corner, and he just sits there and sits in the corner the whole time.
Aw.
A little bit different in the RV because there's so much noise from everything moving and squeaking.
Yeah.
I think he's still trying to adjust to all that, just kinda getting used to it. But Belle's adjusted. She just kinda lays there and sleeps now.
Okay. Oh, that's so awesome. I could talk about puppies and things all day, but I guess we should talk about mental health. So I make it sound like it's this big awful thing, even though it's what the show is all about. But
Right.
puppies, puppies.
They're so
So
pure.
right, I just love them. Um, Lost my train of thought. So, so you start your story. We're gonna talk about mental health. So you start your story wherever makes the most sense. I know you've got quite a few different things that have happened. So you start wherever makes the most sense for you and what you want to share, and I'll just randomly jump in.
Okay. So, I am bipolar, borderline personality, anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So I was recently diagnosed borderline and PTSD this year. Was diagnosed bipolar, anxiety, depression back in 2015. The biggest thing for me
Okay.
was I,
Sorry,
I
finish your
was
sentence.
I was so ashamed of my mental illness whenever I was growing up that I never reached out for help. And then one day I was almost going to commit suicide, and my best friend's dad, I called my best friend and I was like, "Hey, this is it. I'm done." And I hung up the phone, and he called me 4 or 5 times, and I just didn't answer. And then a random phone number called me, and I was like, "Who is this?" And what I was in and out. I had taken some pills and was in
How
and out of
old were you?
consciousness. Uh, 20?
Okay.
Yeah, 20 years old. And it was my best friend's dad, and he was like, "Look, I'm gonna tell you something." His dad was a mechanic, so he spent a lot of time in the mechanic shop, and he said, "You know what my dad used to tell me whenever I was having trouble with something?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Whenever I was turning that wrench, if it wasn't broken, then I had to keep turning that wrench. Is your wrench broken?" And I thought about it and I said, "No, I'm still here, so I guess it's not broken." He's like, "Then keep on turning." And that's something that's stuck with me since that time. It's been about a decade now since that happened, and I haven't had another suicide attempt since then. And
Oh my gosh,
he really,
I like that.
yeah.
Just keep on turning. I love it. So my husband is also a mechanic, so I
Oh,
could like
nice.
picture him saying it, right? It's funny. Okay, couple things. Now I gotta put my thoughts in order here. The last couple days, my brain just has not been working to the capacity that it normally does. So stay with me, guys. I'm trying hard. Um, Okay, so you were saying that this year you were diagnosed the borderline, and it was 2015, so that's what 8 years ago. That sounds
Yes.
about right. With the bipolar. Now, when they diagnosed this year, did they say anything about you say anything about being misdiagnosed? It's actually this one, or it's in conjunction with.
It's in conjunction with my. It was actually I wrote a book called Not Alone back in 2019, and then I revised it and released a second edition as a full novel. The original was a novella, and released it as a full novel. And my editor, who went through it, she was like, you know, a lot of, and the story was a mental health story based on some true events that I went through, but slightly fictionalized.
Mhm.
And she told me, she was like, you know, I've got friends and family who are borderline, and a lot of these symptoms are more borderline than bipolar. So
Yeah.
I brought it up to my therapist, and I brought it up to my psychiatrist, and my psychiatrist, who I've been going to for since I was diagnosed, she was like, yeah, you know, that's probably a really good option, you know, or a really good diagnosis. And she got to looking at some of her notes from the past, and she was like, I think it's safe to say that you probably are. But she explained to me that medication wise is pretty much the same thing as
Mhm.
bipolar. So, you know, it didn't really change my or change my medication, but it
Yeah.
changed my therapy treatment, how my therapist went about it. So, and it really did help. It gave me a new understanding too of who I was. Because at first, whenever I first talked to my editor about it, I got really down on myself because I was like, you know, am I this is just another thing that's quote unquote wrong with me? You know, am I going to survive this? And then I got to
Mhm.
thinking about it, and I'm like, I've survived for almost 30 years now with this undiagnosed. Now imagine what I can do with a diagnosis, and you know, with the
Yes.
right treatment, and overcome that. So I'm pretty excited now that I know, and I know that sounds kind of weird,
No,
but I'm
I
excited to know.
totally get it. So a couple years ago, I finally was diagnosed with autism, and it was that same, huh, wow, okay, this makes sense. And now when you know what, I don't want to say the problem is, but when you know what's happening, let's
Right,
say, you can change the therapy sessions, you can make adjustments according to this new knowledge. It doesn't change anything about you as a person. And yeah, it's not a tick of, oh, you're horrible, but it's just new information to help you be even better than you were before. Um, I know. So I asked that because yeah, bipolar and borderline are very similar. There's a lot of crossover. So I wondered that. Now borderline isn't something, I mean, bipolar, we've had a couple of people on. I think borderline maybe only one, off the top of my head. So can you tell us what is borderline
yeah.
personality disorder?
And I'm still learning a lot about it myself, you know,
Yes, we
because
are not doctors.
yes, not a doctor. But my basic understanding from my therapy and my psychiatry sessions is that it is more of a rapid switch from happy to angry. And you have this instant moment where you say or do things that you don't mean. And by moment, it could be, you know, 5 seconds, or it could be a extended period of time for a couple hours. But you go on basically a tirade, a rampage, however you want to say it. And the biggest difference between bipolar and borderline, my therapist explained to me, was that with bipolar, you're kind of distant from your feelings and things like that. But with borderline, you know, as soon as you do it, as soon as you do that action that you don't normally do, you feel bad, you feel regret about it, and it's kind of
Mhm.
an instantaneous thing that happens. So I've been learning a lot about it and learning how to treat it myself. Still, like I said, still brand new to me. Still
Yeah.
trying to do research on it. Eventually, all my books have some kind of mental illness in it, and eventually, I will write about borderline. I just want to get a better understanding about it.
Oh, for sure. From the bit that I do know about it, I think that relationships play a really big role
Mm.
as well, right? There is this, and again, guys, not a doctor. Every time I say that, I'm thinking of Brooklyn Nine-Nine now. Shh.
Yes.
I love that show.
Yes.
We're rewatching it for like the 50th time. So guys, if you have not watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it is streaming on Netflix. It's amazing.
Oh,
Um, just gotta throw it out there. But anyways, so there's this component of like, I don't even know exactly how to describe it, but with relationships and kind of feeling like they're not they're not where they're supposed to be in your head necessarily.
Hmm.
You're not seeing them the same way as the other person is seeing them, kind of thing. Again,
Right.
horrible way. My brain is not working, guys. I'm so sorry. But there is a component there. If you can speak to that more, great, because my brain's not working.
No, and another thing, what you just said reminded me of, um, one thing that I kind of learned too is that borderline is more so born out of trauma. So it is basically a way for you to build a wall around your true personality to defend against the trauma that you've gone through, and that's where this instantaneous switches are coming from, is all that trauma, and it's a reflex and a
Mhm.
flashback or a trigger that makes you instantly go into that rampage or that moment of temporary blindness. But yeah, I think you're right. It's more of something that is that you're not really born into, that's developed around trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what like bipolar is more something, I don't know, genetic, but like wiring in the brain,
Right.
right? It's more something that it's there, right? It didn't develop. Whereas like the borderline, yeah, you developed. There was generally a trauma, which makes sense that you also were diagnosed with PTSD. Um,
Yes.
they a little bit go hand in hand there. But yeah, the bipolar is more, there's a chemical imbalance. Um, kind
Hmm.
of like in the brain, right? And that's why the medications really help to level that out.
Right.
Okay, so you felt pretty good, like you said, after you got your borderline diagnosis. How did you feel when you got the bipolar diagnosis? Like that, because that's your first one, right? Like the bipolar anxiety, that stuff back in 2015. How did you feel at the beginning of getting diagnosed?
Um, I was really ashamed. I felt like I was a freak. I felt like I was crazy. I felt like I was gonna be the next person on the news who had done something atrocious, because you know, that's what we're taught to believe in, well, in rural counties like I was grown up in. I was born in the South and grew up in a very rural county with very old school beliefs, and we were taught to believe that mental illness was a demon possessing you. And yeah, so being, and this isn't from my family. My family is very progressive and believes in treatment and helping and things like that. But
Okay.
the other people around me,
Mhm.
so I was ashamed of it, and I didn't want to tell anybody. And it took I was very, very cautious about who I told. I probably told maybe 3 or 4 people, outside of my immediate family and my mom, my brother, my grandparents. Probably told 3 or 4 people, over the next 2 or 3 years, and
Mhm.
really kept it a secret until I met my wife. And whenever we met, it took me probably about 6 months to open up to her about my diagnosis.
Mhm.
And just the way that she accepted and embraced me made me realize, you know what? I can still be loved. I can still be normal. And she really opened my eyes to that. She's been a
Aw.
blessing for me. I mean, she really has. She's been my rock, my support, and I couldn't do this without her. I wouldn't be where I am today without her, and I tell her that all the time.
Aw, that's so sweet. Um, if it was my husband saying stuff like that, he'd be like, "Yeah, she's sitting right there. That's why I'm saying it." But we're a funny couple that way. Um, that's so good to hear, and that's the thing I feel like when we have, even if you don't have the diagnosis, when you feel like something is wrong with you, right? So back when I was a teenager, and I felt something was wrong, but I didn't have a name for it, right? Which you probably experienced the same, especially, having that suicide, pretty much almost, you were committed at the time to that idea. So thank you to your friend. Are you still friends with that guy?
Yes, his name is Matt, and we actually did a podcast a couple years ago called Back Porch Parlay together. We both just got crazy busy and weren't able to do it. But one of our segments was craft beer reviews, and we're getting ready to, as soon as I hit the road, we're each going to pick a craft beer every month. I'm going to pick one from wherever I am, and he's going to
Yeah.
pick a local one. And we're going to do a Zoom call and do our beer of the week reviews again.
Oh, I'm
But
so
yeah,
glad.
he and I are still tight, tight, tight.
Excellent. Yeah, because it sounds like he really was a good friend. Like he definitely cared because not only was he trying to get a hold of you, but he got his dad involved, right? Like
Yeah,
he made sure that you stopped doing what you were doing.
yeah.
So,
He really saved my life.
yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that you're still friends because it's so easy to drift apart, but that's some serious friendship right there. Now what was I saying prior to? So when we don't have a term to put to it, but we are feeling this, this whatever, if it's sadness or awfulness or whatever we're feeling, and it can feel like, yeah, I don't deserve love. But no matter diagnosed, undiagnosed, doesn't matter. Everybody deserves it. Everybody. Let's say it again. Everybody deserves it. So don't assume that your lack of happiness, your lack of current happiness equals your long-term happiness. Um, See, my brain is kind of working now. I think that was a pretty
There
good
you
quote.
go.
Yeah, I
That was
like
good. Yeah.
that one. Because yeah, there's ups, there's downs. Like I I have depression. There's ups and downs, right? And so there are days, and I've been married now 11 years, and there are days that I'm still like, I'm awful. Like, what? How are you with me? I'm just like the worst person ever. But
Yeah.
I I know that's not true. My head knows it's not true, and yet the feelings they come and natter in my brain a little bit, trying to convince me otherwise, even though that is not the case. Um, okay, so when you got your diagnosis of bipolar, clearly you were talking to a therapist or a psychologist, whomever. Um, did you start treatment right then? Like, how did that kind of process in your brain?
Yeah, I decided I was gonna go the medication route. I felt like that was what was best for me. So, obviously with medication, you go through trial and error to figure out what works, what doesn't work, which can be scary because sometimes
Mhm.
the medication can amplify your intrusive thoughts. It can cause the suicidal ideation to come back. Um, and, it was a rough patch because I had to figure that out, and I didn't know my wife at the time. It was just me and, the handful of people that knew, and I was up and down trying to figure everything out. Finally found the right combination of medication that I've been on for about 8 years now. Obviously I've had to add some beta blockers and some boosters and things like that to amplify the medication because your body builds up an immunity to it over time. But um and once I got that perfect combination of medicine for me, I met my wife, and that was my sign that she was the one. I said, she came into my life right when I got it figured out. She came in at a good point, and together we're gonna conquer the world
Aw, with the puppies.
with
Don't
the
forget that,
puppies.
with the puppies. They are the true ones that will conquer everything.
That's true.
Oh.
That's true. They run this house or this RV.
As as they should.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went the medication route. Did you go to therapy at some point?
Yeah, I went to therapy for about the first year, and then I kind of backed out. Just life got busy, and I had to make some sacrifices because I had lost a job and needed some extra funds. Um, my grandfather passed away in April of this year, and I started doing grief therapy after that because my grandfather was my best friend. and losing him, he was basically like my dad growing up. So losing him was
Oh,
tough.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I went through grief therapy, and then that evolved into trauma therapy, which is where the PTSD and the borderline came into play. So I did that for about 6 months, and then again, life got busy, and I had to make some sacrifices
Yeah.
for financial reasons. But I'm still going to my psychiatrist, still taking my medicine. Therapy is wonderful. I'm not going to say that it didn't help, because it truly did help.
Hmm.
Um, for me, medication just helps a little bit more, but therapy was a great supplement. And I would never tell anybody to not go to therapy, because therapy, whenever I first started therapy this time around, I'm kind of like a sounding board for a lot of my friends and
Yeah.
family. They come to me with their problems, and I got to the point where every time a friend came to me with a problem, I'm like, "You need to go to therapy. You need to go to therapy. You need to go to
Right.
therapy." And that was my response to everything, was just go to therapy. It's great.
Yep.
So
Right.
I love it.
Exactly. And I'm kind of the same. I went to therapy a few years ago when I was really down in the dumps. But then financially, I eventually had to stop. But it gave me enough of a boost and enough coping strategies that by the time that I had to make that sacrifice and say, I don't can't afford you right now, um, I had enough base to go. And yeah, I take medication too, huge help. I don't think one or the other would suffice for me. It's the combination of the two, even though the therapy kind of comes in spurts. So, the end of last year into early this year, I went back and worked through some other different kind of therapy with her, trauma therapy too, actually. The first time was more focused on depression. This time was more focused on the trauma. And again, I did as much as we're working through like a book kind of thing. Didn't quite make it all the way through before my money ran out. But we got through enough of it that I had some great epiphanies and I felt so much better about myself that now I'm like, okay, I know I can go back when I need to. But I've gotten what I need out of it for this time. And I think that's what's great about therapy is you can always go back to them.
Yeah. It's kinda like continuing education for life, because you
Ah,
go back, and whenever you feel like you need that extra knowledge, that extra umph, that extra motivation, you can go learn the latest tricks and trends. I say tricks and trends, but that's probably the worst way to say it. Learn
I
the
like it.
latest coping mechanisms,
No,
and
that's just the boring way of saying it.
but yeah, I think it's great, and like you said, it's something that supplements or works hand in hand with the medication, and it
Mhm.
gives you valuable tools for not only for your mental illness but for life. I mean, I've learned a lot about
Exactly.
how to navigate life through therapy.
Right, me too, for sure. One of the biggest things, when I first went to therapy, so we're talking 6, 7 years ago, I guess, maybe, yeah, something like that. Maybe even 9. Anyways, years. Years ago when I first went, one of the biggest things that I was dealing with at the time was the school system with my youngest. He, was having so many issues with the school, so many meltdowns, so many suspensions. Like it was just out of control. And every time I would talk to the school, they would get me so emotional that I couldn't make the best decision. And so, one of the biggest tricks, and I've shared it on the show before because it's helped me not just deal with the school, but in general in life, was before talking, in this case to the school, but before talking to somebody that you have what you're going to think of as a hard conversation, write the facts down. And when you're having that conversation, if you feel like your emotions are starting to take control, take a breath, revert back to the facts. So with the school, they would always try to say, well, and the other kids in the class, that makes them feel and I said, no, well, I need to go back to the facts here. The facts here are that my child has been diagnosed with autism and he needs these supports. If these supports were in place, the other kids would feel better. So don't they would always try to throw that at me. And at first I'd be like, oh yeah, I do feel bad for the other kids. And I needed to stick to the facts that if this was put into place, the other would resolve itself, right? So
Absolutely.
sticking to the facts can really help alleviate that emotional response that can get us into trouble or just leave us feeling I'd get off the phone and be like, well, nothing was accomplished. All they did was make me feel like a bad parent. Like, wait, what? What just happened?
Yeah.
So that is probably my favorite trick that I have learned in therapy. There's been lots of other ones. I could probably do a whole other podcast about that. But that has been one that has stuck with me for years and I use it all the time. So with that, what is your favorite thing that you've learned?
I think something that I've learned, like it not necessarily through therapy, but on my own, has been
Yeah.
sensory therapy.
Oh,
So relying on my senses, my touch, taste, feel, smell, hearing, by using things like um, a certain recipe that my grandmother used to use, or a smell that reminds me of my childhood, or a song that reminds me of my childhood, or grabbing like a squishmallow and just squeezing it until I
I
can't
love them.
squeeze it anymore. Yeah, I do too. They are so good.
I have a Snorlax one I sleep with.
Nice.
But yeah, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So you squeeze it till you can't squeeze no more.
Yeah. No, I just, I think it's being able to transport myself back to one of the happier times in my life. Whenever I'm going through a hard time, is a really
Mhm.
an easy way for me to be able to accomplish what I need to and
Yeah.
get out of those funks.
Yeah. Smell is one of the most powerful senses, especially like you said, if you're doing a grandmother's recipe or something. Smell is one of the most powerful senses for bringing you back to something. I
Yes.
really like the squishmallow and the like hearing stuff, sensory for keeping in the present moment.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, it can still bring you back, but smell generally will trigger the bring you back, and the sense of squishing something or touching something brings you to the now because it's currently happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one that has been shared. Um, but we haven't talked about the smell one as much and like cooking something. So that's kind of neat. Is
Yeah.
there a specific recipe that's your favorite?
Um, my grandma likes to make brownies. She loves making brownies, so I'm not a baker, but my wife is. So whenever
Okay.
she makes brownies, it kind of reminds me of grandma's house, and I'm like,
Mhm.
just puts a smile on my face. And even if I don't eat the brownies until the next day or something, like it's just that smell that brings me back to grandma's house. And whenever I was a
Right.
kid, and she was making me brownies after school, and I
Aw.
was watching Dragon Tales or whatever I was watching.
Oh, yes, I remember that show. That's awesome. Yeah, there's just certain senses that you're like, "Oh, yes, that reminds me. I love that, and I miss that." Whenever I see a beach, it makes me think of vacations, and I
Mm,
just want to go on vacation again. We are planning one. Um, very poorly planning, but we keep going online to look at them. But
nice. That's
so
a step.
right, exactly. So before we switch gears here, is there any last um tricks or trends, there you go, that you want to share about any of the your diagnoses or all of them or just in general?
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit on the show today, but dogs, pets are wonderful. My dog Dutch, I adopted him in 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. And I was going through a really tough time at my job. There was some threats that I might be fired because of a political thing going on. And I adopted this dog, and then my mental health was so bad that my immune system started shutting down. I got pneumonia, flu, and strep throat and bronchitis, and was sick for 2 months.
Oh my
My
gosh.
dog never, my roommates were afraid to come in to my room because obviously, the flu and strep throat.
Right?
But And my wife, then fiance, was at school at the time, 4 hours away. So all I had was Dutch, and he would lay there with me. And he was
Aw.
the reason that caused me to get up every day.
Yeah.
There were times where I was like, I just want to give up and let this sickness take me. And
Mhm.
then I was like, who's going to take care of this dog? I just adopted him. He's relying on me. He's loving me
Yes.
right now. He needs me. And turned out I needed him more than he needed me.
That's usually the case with dogs, but it's so true. Whenever I'm on somebody else's show and they ask me for my favorite tip, yeah, it's always dogs. I have
Mhm.
cats too, and I absolutely adore them. But mine for dogs is that it forces me to go outside. So I have 3 dogs, but one of them will not poop in the backyard. Won't do it. He has to go on a walk. And
Okay.
so no matter how I'm feeling, no matter the weather, I'm taking him for a walk. Even if it's a short walk, I have to do it. So it's the combination dog plus nature and the fresh air and right? And yeah, dogs, guys, just
Beautiful
dogs.
thing.
Get them, rescue them, even if you're
Yes.
allergic. No. My niece
I
is so super allergic to them. I feel so bad when she comes over. I'm
Oh,
like, "Hey, here's
no.
some allergy pills. I love you." Yeah. So, your books. Tell me.
Yes. So, my first book was a novella called Not Alone. I mentioned that earlier. It's a
Mhm.
mental illness story based on my life. I recently re-released it back in October of this year as a full-length novel. I went back and rewrote it and did some edits and changed a couple things to add a little bit more
Is
oomph
it
to the story.
Is it still called Not Alone?
Yes, it's Not
Okay.
Alone, the second edition.
Okay.
Um, it's got a different cover, different blurb,
Mhm.
but still the same message, just a little bit different story.
Mhm.
Um, then I published in 2020. I published my poetry collection, Coffee, Alcohol, and Heartbreak. I wrote those
Oh.
poems between 2012 and 2016. So it was before I was diagnosed up to about a year after I was diagnosed and whenever I met my wife. That's kind of the end of the poetry book, is kind of you seeing the shift from depression to saved.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have also been published in a few anthologies, but my
Nice.
most recent book was Enamored Echoes Book One, Potent, and that is a retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. Um,
Oh.
one of the main characters, Oberon, who is the king of the Fae, he has schizophrenia. So all of my
Mhm.
books have some kind of mental illness theme.
I remember you
Um,
mentioned that, yeah.
Yes. And then before that, I had published the Sunflower Kisses Book One, The Seeds of Love, which is about a mentally ill young man falling in love in a long distance relationship. Who would have thought that I would write something like that?
Yeah, it's
Um,
not like you've ever experienced that.
no, not at all. Uh, I am currently working on the second book. It is going to be a 5 book series, and I also just finished a book called The Principles, which is about the first royal rural female principal in the late 1980s in a very small town in the South. So it goes over the discrimination she faces.
Mhm.
My grandmother was a principal. She was the first female principal in our county.
Oh, so it's a little bit
And
about her.
yeah, it's actually the grandmother from Not Alone. So so it's connected to all my books are connected to Not Alone. They're little Easter eggs that are like it's in the same universe, but they may not be happening at the same time or in the
Mhm.
same place, but they're in the same universe and there's little nods to that. So I love connecting it all back to Not Alone because that's my
Mhm.
baby.
Yeah.
That was my firstborn. It was the first brainchild I had, and so
I get you. Yep, I got you. Your first one is always, like, so special.
yes.
Even when you rewrite it and re-release it. Actually, it's so funny you say that. So my first was a book of poetry. And I've added some stuff to it before I published it back in 2017. Yeah, that sounds right. And I've been thinking about rewriting it and re-releasing it too. So yeah, I like okay, I'll just keep the so that's why I was like, should we keep the name? Not, but yeah, okay. So where do we get a hold of these books?
They're available on pretty much all your major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Walmart, Waterstones for our UK friends, and Indigo for our Canadian friends.
Thank you.
But also we have them for sale on the Tea with Coffee Media website. You can get them from bookshop.org, which is a website that the proceeds go back to independent bookshops. So a portion of every
Nice.
sale goes to the bookshop, to independent bookshops that sign up. So I love using them. And also a friend of mine, Kyle Bernier, who has written a book called Lazy Creativity and has made a movement around it. He is now selling our books on his website. So
Nice.
several big places that you can get it if you want to, pay a little bit more but get shipping faster. But you can pay a little bit less from some of these smaller retailers. It just may take a little bit longer for the shipping. So
Mhm.
whichever one, you feel like is best for you, that's where you can find my books.
I love it. And where do we follow you?
I am at Tyler Wittkofsky on pretty much all social media, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I've even got a Lemonade. I've got a Pinterest, but I don't really use it. I don't
I
know
don't mean
anything about
either.
Pinterest. Yeah, so I've got pretty much all the social media platforms, but that does not mean I'm active on all of them.
So if we want to see the most active stuff, where should we go?
So my most active are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Okay. Excellent. So that's good to know. We'll go to those ones because we want to get the
Yeah.
active stuff. Is there any last words or anything that you want to share with the audience?
Just don't forget that you're not alone. I know it feels like you are sometimes, but your story isn't over yet. My story wasn't over back in 2015. Your story isn't over in 2023. We're all fighting our if your wrench isn't broke, keep on turning. And if you're still here, if you're listening to this podcast, that means your wrench isn't broke. So keep on turning. And if you need anything, if you ever get to feel like you're alone, please find me on social media. Go to my website, fill out the contact form, shoot me an email, whatever, and I will be there to talk. I never want anybody to feel alone in this world. I've experienced that, even though it wasn't true. And if I can be the difference, like Gandhi said, be the difference you want to see in the world.
Oh, I love that. And that is the joy of nice small indie authors, right? Is we're actually here for you.
Yeah,
It's not a lie.
yeah.
So thank you again so much for being on the show. And I cannot wait to see what else comes your way. And, if you ever share pictures of the dogs on social media, do you? Because that's important.
Yes, we do. We share them a lot on our Adventure with Coffee page.
Perfect. So yeah, that's the one I want to go to. I mean, I follow the other ones too, but I like that one the best.
Don't blame you. They're the stars
Right.
of the show.
It's true. I mean, I started TikTok by putting my animals on first, and then I went, "Oh, I guess I could use it for my business too." But like animals, guys, animals.
They're the best. They're so
They
pure.
are, right? So thank you. As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.